Hello, everyone, and welcome to Growth Sutra Monthly 2020X Vision LinkedIn Live session. I'm Ritika, and I'm really excited to be here with you all today. Today's topic is something many of you are struggling with right now, and it's moving your AI from POC to proof of profit for a faster scale. Let me introduce our speakers for today. So we have Gayatri Devijan, founder at Advice, chapter president at Applied AI Association, and former CTO L&T Group. We have Praveen Savant, who is an independent global advisor, board governance and technology advisor, former CTO. We have Arun Matthew, who is executive vice president, systems and technology at Mullen Lowe Lintus Group. And we have Vishwendra Verma, founder and CEO of Growth Sutra and host for our today's session. So our today's session is structured into two segments. The first segment is the Valley of Death, and the second segment is the breakthrough blueprint. So please join the conversation with us in the chat window. Please share your name and your location. Drop your questions in the comments and tell us about your own AI projects. And please don't forget to like our event page. Let's get started. Over to you, Vishwendra.
Thank you, Ritika. Thank you so much. And welcome to 2020X Vision. I am Vishwendra, founder of Growth Sutra and your host for this session. Last This week in Davos, Satya Nadella said something sharp. If AI only benefits tech firms, it's a bubble. ServiceNow's vice chairman was even more direct, throwing spaghetti at a wall to see what sticks. That's how the first wave of AI adoption played out. Boardrooms are done with that now. And Wipro's CEO captured the shift. 2025 was experimentation. 2026 is accountability. That's the shift. Not more pilots, not more experiments. Accountability means, does this move the PNL or not? Here's the reality behind, and these are the words from MIT study. 95% of AI pilots fail to deliver measurable ROI as per the MIT study. Only 10% is scale, and only 6% achieve the bottom line impact as per McKinsey. So the question for the next 60 minutes is simple. How do you cross that gap? How do you move from working POC to proof of profit before your leadership runs out of patience? And to get us started, let me go to the distinguished panel today and ask them a personal value of death moment that they have lived through in past. Let me start with you, Gayatri. If you could share a past value of death moment or use case where an AI pilot failed because it was chasing the wrong type of AI. Are we overlooking the right deal behind AI? And also, as you answer, talk a bit about yourself as well.
Sure. So first of all, let me just correct the introduction. Ritika beautifully said things, but I wasn't a CTO in L&T Group, if at all. So I was a global BU head. I think for record's sake, we have to have those things corrected because a CTO shouldn't take offense. This is a pleasure to be here. I've been in the IT industry for 33 years now, and the last 1 year has been completely, submerged in AI, the AI wave, I would call it that. And as part of Applied AI, we have conducted several events ourselves and picked the brains of several speakers, several practitioners. And I think all of what you said, Vish, to start with, is true. A lot of experimentation, a lot of toying around the flashy thing, especially the Gen AI was the real flashy toy, and everybody wanted it, and everybody wanted to save their purse and save some dollars, and hence there was a mad rush about getting everything AI-fied, if I can call it that. But the truth is, there is still a lot of skepticism. There is still a lot. We'll talk more about it as we go into the session, really. If I were to talk for the IT industry, IT services industry, which is where I come from largely, all the 30 years plus has been with that industry. So my loyalties are there. If you ask me, I think still people are figuring it out. We still don't know what should we do internally. Some of them have aced it. Some of them are still figuring it out. But the thing is this, right? When we went and implemented some of the ERP and the CRM systems, they had a working baseline and they never changed it in probably 6 months or 1 year. There was no upgrade at the frequency at which your Gen AI tools get upgraded today. And hence, I'm not able to take a baseline and start building something on that for the fear of losing out on the newer future features of the system. And hence, with AI, I don't think we should call it a valley of death moment, because it's been all POC, all toying around, all trying things out. We are not there yet. I think the numbers are also quite evident, right? 5% of success, but are you able to show productivity? What does success mean in this context? So, like we were talking with some of our friends too earlier, right? The more we try, the more we think we know, the more we realize we don't know. That's the phase we are in. Probably 26 will be the year that will answer many of our questions. I'll pause there. I'm sure my co-panelists have a lot of other views too.
No, thank you, Giri. Thank you so much, and thank you for correcting us. I understand there might be oversight sometimes in terms of reading your profile,
No problem.
but yes, in terms of when coming to the valley of death, I believe because there's a conversation which is already going within the industry, and 2025 has been seen as the year of pilots for AI, AI projects by many studies. So even MIT study has also talked about, there's a 95% failure rate in the AI POCs. And I do agree with your fact that, uh, we have not reached to that scale. There has been experimentation which is still going on, and but yes, we have already started receiving comments in this regard. So we have received a question. I'll pick up that question, but before actually taking up that question, let me go to Praveen and let me ask his views in terms of his POC value of death moment, and if you could also talk about yourself quickly, Praveen.
So thanks, Vishwendra. Okay, at such, Vishwendra, since I have worked for 35 years in the industry, largely as CTO in large Indian as well as multinational organizations, Godrej Group, Ballarpur Industries, Star TV, and Lintas Interpublic Group have been my enterprise journey destinations. So in 35 years, actually, I have had not one but many value of death moments. Okay. So for a second, I have to think which one I have to talk about. But since today we are focusing on AI, I will probably share the upward experience which I had in AI. So it happened about 3 years back when the AI was, kind of picking up. There was curiosity. So there was this sentiment, employee sentiment analysis using a chatbot that was introduced. It was a new concept, novel concept, and we started with a pilot, and the pilot was for our South India offices. We have about 30 offices in India, out of which we rolled out for 2 offices in South India. And South, again, with all due respect, because they are more traditionally very responsive adaptive offices. So, and we said we will observe it for 2 quarters. And since it's a new concept of taking employee sentiments and analyzing, there was nothing as is process to look at, but it was a new introduction. The first response, okay, when we rolled out, was very good. Excellent dashboards, slicing, dicing, function wise, team wise, level wise. It gave us good insights. Okay, and actually, the problem happened afterwards, because while we received the data, and okay, I'll be honest about it, there was no workflow which was designed to then take action on it. Okay, so that was a fatal error in retrospect. So what happened was people gave responses, hoping that something will change, something will happen, somebody will reply back, own it, accountability. That didn't happen. So slowly the responses started to reduce. So after the quarter 1, when the next cycle went, we hardly got statistically significant response. When it happened, the governance committee, which was looking at it, they started to basically have doubts. So the employees who responded, it resulted in some kind of a trust gap. Means we are giving response, but nothing is happening. There is no outcome to be back. Nobody is owning the process. And then the CFO said, if the response is not stationary or improving, or getting something which we can measure, I'm not funding the expansion. So the slowly the initiative went on the back burner. So that is one experience which I can talk of in AI.
Thank you, Praveen. I think that's a great learning, that the audience would have in terms of what you face in terms of this POC. Let me quickly go to Arun as well. Arun, from your perspective, what is the one value of death moment that you could recall on the POCs?
Oh, so, uh, uh, thanks for asking, Vish. Hi, everyone. Arun Matthew here. Roughly about 25 plus years of experience in IT operations, so to speak, and having sat on both sides of the table as a client, as an enterprise person, as well as a consultant for a couple of years, I've seen both sides of the table. Now, having said that, uh, the value of death moments for me, again, as Praveen said, we share a couple of common organizations between us. Uh, we've seen a few. In AI, uh, I have only been a participant to one of the projects that Praveen was talking of, but have not seen any. But again, coming to the point that most of the projects there where we see a value of death moment, specifically with AI, and this is what I have read, and again, one experience that I have as a bystander who's seen the project happen is the workflow or the process. If the process is not completely thought through, then we will see a certain fixed confirmed failure of the entire project because we've not thought through the process, so to speak. Okay, we can deploy AI in a place, but what are you going to do with the data that comes out of it, and how are you going to feed the data into it? So that's again whole new chapter that we can speak on, and I believe we will
Sure.
continue to speak on this further. I will leave it at that.
Thank you, Arun. Thank you so much. So what I'm hearing already is that in all stories, the technology worked at POC, but the choice of AI type, or even the business alignment or the process, or the workflows were not mapped internally with the business. So that's exactly the value of death. Uh, we are here to map today. We also received one question while we were speaking. So there's a question from Sheikh Januddin. Thanks, Vishwendra. Glad to hear about the agentic AI apps as we have rolled out from pilot to productized Gen AI apps. However, the ROI remains as real questions from the C levels. So that's more of a comment or insight, but that shows the issues that the startup founders or product teams who are building these AI apps are facing in the real world scenarios. Any comment that you may have before I move to the questions? Yeah, GD.
Yeah, so if I may just chime in, right? Two things here about the value of death moment, as my co-panelists were speaking. From a POC point of view, really, I think POCs are meant for going through the valley of death, right? You have to go through the failures to understand what works. So I think it kind of then becomes counterproductive to say, I had a POC and I failed. I mean, that's the purpose of the POC itself. That's one point I wanted to drive home. The other thing is now that we have done all of this and some of these implementations are successful, like our audience pointed out, at Advice, which is what I'm right now, I founded and I'm consulting through Advice. We don't call it as return on investment, at least for a few foreseeable future. We have to call it return on intelligence, right? We have been investing a lot on our intelligence. So earlier we had this knowing how to do things and graduating from there, from knowledge to wisdom to blah blah blah. Now, I mean, everything is democratized, everybody has access to that wisdom. So there is so much intelligence that's already there. How do you make your AI engines more and more intelligent so that at some point in time the investment really kicks in? So my view will be, too early to look for ROIs. Okay, we need to wait and watch. We need to see how well this picks up rather than pressing the panic button. It can't be a quarter game, it can't be quarter to quarter. It has to be at least for a few quarters or a year or more. That is when you will start seeing the results. That's my humble submission here, Vishwendra.
Thank you, G. Thank you so much. And I liked what you shared as ROI as return on intelligence. In fact, some of the conversation that I have been hearing, especially in broadcast media, you're also talking about how this compute is scaling the revenue, and that's the phrase that they have now been increasingly used in their conversation. So obviously, the end goal is to show ROI or value that these AI could create for the organization. But yes, it's still some distance before we can, miles to go before we kind of see those values in action. Okay, but I would at the same time, I request audience to share their questions in the comment section. We'll pick their questions as we have this conversation, as I have this conversation with the speakers here. Uh, let me move to the first segment, which is this is the continuation of from the icebreaker, which is the value of debt segment. But here, let me also talk about certain research or patterns that we are seeing. So, some of the MIT research actually identified 4 common failure modes on the road from POC to profit. It's a learning gap, workflow gap, trust gap, and investment gap. But let me ask Praveen. So Praveen, from your perspective, out of these 4 failure modes, which one kills the most AI initiatives, and why does it catch everyone off guard, even when the pilot proves the technology works? Also, explain. If you could also explain your domino theory of failures that you shared with us earlier.
Yeah. So, Vishwendra, I think that's a very good question. If I look at it, actually all 4 modes which you talked about, learning, workflow, trust, and investments are actually interrelated to some extent. And since we specifically discussed about the pilots, which are the proof of concept, then scaling them into proof of profit, why there is a problem. So, couple of qualifications here. So generally what happens is if you're looking at proof of concept, okay, let's face it, you are never really taking the entire scope. Okay. Before for POC, you are taking one variable outcome, which is the most troublesome or something, and you are proving that yes, this is the tool, this is the solution, this is the process which is going to work. Okay. So that is one. Second thing is the real fact of life is that it is very difficult to capture the business process as is as well as to be. Okay, if anybody is saying that they are really well aware of it, I would find it very hard to completely take it because uh, in my previous life, we had engaged Accenture only to do business process mapping as is in 2P, paying sizable amount of sum. Okay, but even then there were gaps. Now, if people of Big Four consulting can make errors or gaps, unintended, okay, inadvertently, but then let's face it that yes, there is a issue there. So typically, what happens is for the sake of simplicity, let's say it's a learning gap. Learning what is the agile process, knowing all the nuances, and also learning or envisioning what is should be the to be processed. Now, there comes the next part, which is the workflow. I talked about the sentiment analysis, and there was no workflow to support that there is an action which should be taken, there is an outcome. Now, what happens is, so learning gap is one, okay, which is the start. Sometimes the investment gap also could be a trigger if it is underinvested, the pilot itself, then it is not equipped to have sufficient resources to do a meaningful POC or meaningful project which will give us the confidence. So then, in which case, there is always it can be the trigger that because the whole thing was so underfunded that nothing could move beyond a particular level. Now coming back to where I was, so first is the gap in understanding, which is also again getting compounded with the workflow gaps, because what happens is when you look at one process, there is always a sub process, there is a dependency, there are other interfaces, there are people who own the outcome, etc. So that's a workflow gap. Now when you have this learning gap and workflow gap, what is the eventual outcome because of the gap? It is the trust gap. Now trust is the hardest currency to earn and the easiest currency to lose. Okay. And particularly, so what we tend to do is we tend to look at it, or we want to reframe it is a resistance to change. People are having change management issues. we are having cultural issues, and so it's often gets camouflaged. Now, with all this, if there is not that feeling of confidence, if there is not the feeling of ownership, if there is not the feeling that everything is looked at, or at least we are not able to confidently say, okay, these are the likely errors, or these are the likely success rates, and these are the likely points where we need a human in the loop, or this is where we want to make sure the decisions are owned, okay, or the failures are owned, then eventually that entire picture is getting translated into people who are going to put their dollar where you want it, right?
Correct.
So
Yeah.
therefore I think that it's a domino effect after all this. Then eventually the investment, because organizations, like you said, the broadcast media said, we are not interested in what is the compute. We want to know revenue. So business will always want to know what is the outcome that you are talking about. Okay, they are not
Absolutely.
interested in compute. They are not interested in tokens. They are not interested in what is the tool that you are using behind it. They want to know in specific business terms what is the outcome. And with
Yeah.
these gaps, there is a cascading effect. Particularly the trust gap, which is the last result. With trust gap, it gets done, and typically in most organizations, I've worked in Indian organizations and multinational, the grapevine is always much stronger than you think it is. Okay, so then the feel, the mood, everything starts.
Yeah, we lost you, Praveen. I think there's some issue, technical issue. But quickly, let me go to GD. If you look at these failure modes, what are those failure modes? Like Praveen did talk about some failure modes, but do you have any other perspective? In fact, what you shared in terms of ROI, there's also a question that I've received. So post your response, and I'll also raise that question to you.
Sure. Sure. So I look at it from two viewpoints, right? The domino effect or the failure modes that we're talking about. We're talking about four failure modes: learning gap, trust gap, workflow gap, and the investment gap. I look at it from two views. If I'm creating an AI engine, or I'm trying to set up an AI engine, or let's say an AI project I have taken up. So from the point of view of AI setting up and the engineering team and how that goes, is to start with, there is a learning gap, right? That is a big because I mean there's only so much one can know about it. Today there is no one person who can say I'm an expert in implementing AI end to end for an enterprise, and we're talking in enterprise context, right? So there is no there is no one person who knows it all, and hence there is a learning gap, which kind of gives way to workflow gap. Because I don't know much, or I don't know everything, I'm not an AI really. So because the individual does not know, or the team does not know, there's a workflow gap that comes as a I mean as a effect of learning gap. And this, what happens is, then there is a trust deficit,
Yeah.
because the workflow is not known, because people don't have all the answers, so there is a trust deficit.
There's a
Now,
point of no return.
yeah, and kind of all of this results in, why should I invest more? So an AI
Absolutely.
needs a lot of investment. So this is from an AI point of view. But from an enterprise point of view, how do you kind of fix this? The first thing is, the enterprise, the leaders typically should start with trust, right? This new technology, every time there is a new technology, you need to have a budget for R&D, and kind of set it aside and forget about it. Don't look for a P&L attached to an R&D project. So if you get to that, then the trust, then you talk about, once the trust is there, the investments come down to whatever extent. If you're $100 million organization, probably you throw in a couple of millions and do what is possible for a couple of millions. So the 2% is the bare minimum you can expect. And then you go to, once that is there, I'm sure teams will kind of brace up. And then comes the learning, invest, reskill, upskill. I think that is the need of the hour, especially the India system. While we say we are doing 10 million people are getting trained and all of that, I think we need to do much, much more and much deeper. There is a lot of discussions that I'm part of, where we are looking at how can you make it reach the highest potential in the shortest time frame. It's not about your Udemy or Coursera or all the online YouTube channels. It's about the method and the approach, and who will focus on what. I think that's a very big thing. And then finally comes the workflow. So The enterprise should not panic. The current systems, legacy systems that are working as they are working, R&D budget, and from there you start. So you go through all the four aspects so that there is no deficit in any of these things. And one more point I want to add. Praveen is not there. I wish he's listening. He talked about business doesn't
He's
care
listening.
about outcomes. Um, I think business must start caring about outcomes. Okay. He said business doesn't care about anything else other than outcomes. In the AI era, every individual, whatever shape or form or whatever role the person plays, must care about how do I get that outcome?
Hmm.
Why are we doing this? These questions, every individual, nobody is going to escape this. And if they escape, they face the consequence. So I'll stop there, Vishwan.
Thank you, JD. And we have got a question about the ROI. So, do you suggest to monitor metrics at least if the impact of ROI has some miles to go? And what kind of metrics generally you watch out for? So, that's a question from your perspective. What are the kind of metrics that the people should watch out for, if not ROI?
I wouldn't say don't watch out. I didn't say don't watch out for return on investment. I said call it as return on intelligence for the time being because you are gaining more and more knowledge when your POC is successful or a failure. So the return on intelligence is a very important aspect to see how far am I getting ahead of the curve and understanding how this whole beast called AI works in my context of the enterprise. Metrics, traditional metrics will not work. We will have to come up with metrics depending on what kind of organization it is. People usually say, I need 5% productivity. So my question is, have you baselined your numbers? Do you have, so if someone says, I want 10% productivity, 10% return on investment, what is it today? And how do so let's say you had 100 people doing a job. Are you saying you want to do the same job with 90 people? Right now, that people thing is a big talk, right? Am I going to lose jobs? So fear of losing jobs and all of that is doing the rounds now, and hence if you're not clear about what you mean by productivity, because that's not going to happen immediately. It will not happen because the more and more I look at this subject, I think the more and more the need to educate people in so many different aspects of this AI as a topic, that there is so much to do, there is so much to learn, there is so much to earn, and hence the ROI has to be specific to the industry, to the organization, and define it clearly and track that. Definitely, the metrics can't be what it was for an SDLC. That much I can
Yeah,
tell.
yeah, absolutely. Just to add to your point, in fact, I was going through some research report. It was from BCG and McKinsey. So there are certain categories of ROIs that can be actually looked into. One is, of course, cost and productivity. You also talked about that. Second is revenue. Revenue growth and revenue. Third is speed and acceleration. So how are you bringing agility? So what kind of ROI metrics that can be, worked around that speed and agility? And fourth is in terms of that trust and governance that you can bring in. So these are four different categories that they talked about from ROI perspective. But
No, but
let me move to
how is that different from the traditional metrics? We have always measured all of this, right? So I'm
yeah,
saying
absolutely.
because AI is I would say it has limitless possibilities. Our
Hmm.
thinking has to change as to what is real success. How do I define real success? Assume everything becomes AI-fied and people
Yeah.
lose jobs. Who's going to buy all the AI products that we are making? Who's going to
Hmm.
use the sophisticated technology? So there are very pertinent questions that we should ask. Well, how do you define success? How do you define productivity? So your
Yeah,
metric has to be completely rewired. It can't be what has been there traditionally for ages. That's again
exactly.
my view.
Thanks, GD. Arun, if your views on failure modes, what
Oh,
would you recommend? Any contrary view from your perspective?
uh, I don't have a contrary view. I think we've spoken quite a lot on a lot of things, with reference to ROI and failure modes and stuff like that. My submission is this: when it's a technology that is common,
Mm,
okay. When SAP HANA was introduced way back in 2010, okay, we had roughly the same kind of feelings that came about. No, HANA is great, it does things fast, I can ask it a question. It'll give me this, it'll give me that. People, all of these discussions happened then.
Hmm.
What is its adoption right now in the industry? How many of us have moved from ECC to HANA or are
Hmm.
moving? Okay, from 2000, we are in 2025.
26.
Yeah,
Hmm.
26, sorry. Uh, I'm still 15 days backwards. Uh, so we are still in 2020, we are in 2026. So we're talking of about 15 years plus with HANA being introduced. And we
Hmm.
have not had that kind of adoption. People are still moving to HANA. We're still hearing people say that, okay, I'm going to move to HANA. I want to do this, I want to do that, and all that
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah. So what are we talking of? When HANA came, we did the same discussion. Right now,
Hmm.
AI, we're having the same discussion. When we take the view that this is a technology as a tool to
Hmm.
improve my processes, my production levels, my ability to predict, my ability to make decisions, that's when we start moving the needle forward.
Yeah. Correct.
That's a key, that's a pivot point for us. When we
Hmm.
make that change in mindset, is when we start pivoting towards progress into AI. We
Hmm.
do not do a project to deploy AI. Okay, we will use AI to improve the entire compute aspect of a process. But if the process is not improved, it is garbage in, garbage out. Even if it is AI throwing out that garbage.
Got it.
Okay,
Yeah. Absolutely.
so we are all having this discussion, and mind you, all of this discussion is important. We need to have
Hmm.
those debates and those fights and those chai pe charcha and you know tapri pe charcha and all of those things on these topics. Yeah, I will definitely encourage it. uh, but we need to still come down to the point that this is a tool, and
Hmm.
we need to look at where it fits in the entire enterprise. Okay,
Right.
as an
Yeah.
individual and as the process itself to improve the business. That is my take on it.
Absolutely. Understood, Arun. So, while we are having this conversation, I think Shilpa is facing some issues in terms of we are getting echo, sir. I think there was issue earlier, but it shouldn't be in echo anymore. It is rectified. And then we have this question from Shilpa again, which is to GD, ma'am, SDLC process was long, hence we had to wait for years for ROI, but AI-driven world is fast. Still, do we have to wait for years? So,
A very good question. So, I think the process of SDLC, right? So I've lived through it for 30 years, 3 decades. I mean, kind of got into the industry when we were still doing stuff augmentation, body shopping. That is how we got into the industry in the 90s, and then we moved from strength to strength. And today we define processes. We are so good at it. We've learned it over years. Right now, AI may be very fast, but humans have a pace. I believe strongly that just because the technology is pulling you to an extent where you will make those kind of rapid decisions, I think we should refrain from doing that. I think the way we think, our experience, that is one of the biggest differences between AI and humans, right? I always keep talking about this. My knowledge, my wisdom, my experience, and my exposure, what I have seen around is unique, like that for each one of us in the call now, right? And all the humans around. So we have to bring that to the forefront when it comes to adoption of AI. I think Arun beautifully put it, right? If it doesn't serve the purpose, what use of this technology then? So we need to take a conscious call, and that only humans can take. And that businesses have to think through. Do we need AI here? Do we need automation here? How much of it do we need? So these are questions only humans can answer best, right? And hence, AI might be fast, but humans have to pace it out and do it for the benefit of humanity. I hope that answers Shilpa.
thank you, GD. So do you think human can slow down AI adoption? But that's on the on the fun part of it. It was just a comment, not a question. But we have got another question, which is from a different perspective altogether. This is from Santhanam Devanand. So, is it advisable to take a wait and watch or run for the first mover advantage for an AI first approach? Uh, any thoughts from the panel?
Yeah, I think I have been answering, so Praveen and Arun can chime in. I have my views, but I'll wait for them to share.
So,
Praveen, you're on mute.
Praveen, you're on mute, but I will just start as
Yeah.
so. When I look at that question, I would say that we follow the same old process that we have been following for a long time. Okay.
There's an echo coming
Echo
from
with
Praveen.
Praveen's line.
Yeah.
Go
Now it
ahead,
should be
Arun.
So,
better.
yeah. So, okay, I think we are better. So, let's look at the low-hanging fruits. So again, the need to have, the good to have, the best to have, or however we pace it out, or the low-hanging fruits that we can take. What's the mid-tier and what's the long-term goal? So there are things that we can do with AI right now. So most of us use Office 365. Copilot is free with it. A lot of the tools are free with it. Excel, we all use that. A very old, a very good friend of ours used this line on the first day of training for MS Office. Was using MS Office as a patent tank to kill a fly. Uh, okay, so and that is a
That-
line that stuck with me for almost 20 years now.
No, so
So
you address that, Arun. So if there's a business case, then and you have mapped out that business case, then you should take a first mover advantage and start talking about
yes,
your
Yeah.
AI.
if it is well deployed, well documented, small ones. Don't take the big
Yeah,
ones. Take the
correct.
small ones.
Right. So just
Absolutely.
to add, Vishwendra, so I think it's never going to be a binary choice whether I should wait or whether I should, kind of be the first one, because this is not the way to approach it. The real question is whether there is a business case. It is not because I have access to a tool, so I would rather be the first mover. I would rather recommend look at it if you can be the first learner in understanding the tool and knowing your business, and then say where is the real fate. Okay. So I hope that
Absolutely.
covers.
There's
So,
in continuation to that question, there's another question that I've received, but it is from different perspective. So we are providing AI automation services. Which industries we should target that can foresee a clear ROI with AI automations? Again, that this question goes back to what you shared earlier. Have you defined that business case? But if you want to share any viewpoint with this question to this question.
Right. So when we talk of AI automation, again, this is a very, maybe 5,000 feet level perspective. Okay. Automation can apply to any place. Okay. What we seen is there is a domain expertise which comes into leverage here. If you know the business, if you know the domain, if you know the industry where there is a clear impact, for example, healthcare would have different levers. Okay, in case of healthcare, there is a Indian startup which is actually automated the entire process of reviewing the images and giving interpretation of the likely health related issues. Now, in which case, there is a clear outcome, there is a clear benefit, and there is somebody who's owning it. Okay, it is not a full-fledged automation. AI can't still, even in healthcare industry, say that okay, this person has these class of, let's say, issues, the health parameters, etc. It still needs to be reviewed by a qualified doctor, but the process is making it easier, and that's where they are seeing the growth. Similarly, for agri industry, okay, because you're talking of industry specific, there are different levers which come into play. If you have the domain understanding of the issue that you're trying to solve, then that is the industry where you can look at automation. Generically, you cannot say that okay, financial industries, there is this automation which is going to work. There are enough and more cases of banking, insurance, or NBFCs where there has been a lot of work which has been done in predictive analysis, in business process automation, and so on and so forth. But therefore, the answer cannot be one line, okay, you look at automotive industry or so on and so forth, but look at the domain expertise and then consider.
Thank you. Thanks, Arun. Sorry, thank you, Praveen. GD, you had some comment.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
wanted
So
to share something
yeah, I
before.
think on the ROI for AI automation, Praveen, I subscribe to whatever he said. But for the other question on wait and watch or first mover advantage, I was just thinking of an analogy here. When we went to college, right, all of us were very. I mean, English is not our first language, so we were all learning English and vocabulary was getting added. So there were a few people who said, "I don't need this vocabulary. I'll manage with what I have." But there were others who went for this GMAT and GATE and CAT and whatnot. So they were working on their vocabulary. So while I didn't, shift to both the sides, but my own case was I don't have to use it, but I need to understand it. I would apply the same logic to AI as well. See where it is really applicable and go for it. If the business purpose, like Arun said, really makes sense. But not knowing, waiting and watching, sitting on the fence, that is not going to help anyone. Like I said, every person needs to understand and appreciate the goodness of AI. In healthcare, it has made huge inroads. Drug discovery, it has made huge inroads.
Yeah.
Education, also, we can use it in so many places. A lot of use cases, right? So my take would be there is nothing called wait and watch. You jump in, you start learning, you see how it is moving, you be part of the movement, right? And when the time comes, assess it and see where you can apply it.
Thank you, GD. So let me come back to the our segment, which is value of death and the failure modes that we were talking about. Uh, the one big shock we normally get, and that's been reported, is the infrastructure shock, infrastructure cost shock. And the data suggests that infrastructure can consume 60 to 80% of total AI budgets, and around 80 to 85% of organizations misestimate AI costs by more than 10 to 25%. That's the kind of data that has been shared. So, Gayatri, from your perspective, what if the infrastructure forecast has not been taken into consideration? What are the other three cost line items that never appear in POC budgets, but end up dominating production P&Ls?
First of all, I'm again saying enterprises. I'm talking about IT industry. Okay, these two, because I think IT industry set up the larger enterprises for success in terms of digitization, their digitization journey and whatnot. So, for all of us, India being a very price sensitive market, right? For if you're building for India, we definitely have to be extremely cost conscious about. Not that for others we shouldn't be. India is even more, so we need to tighten the purse string. So usually, what gets missed out? Okay, I've been talking to some of my customers also about this. We miss out largely on our retraining of people because your customer says it's all AI, so why should I pay your developer so much? I have got the developer to learn Python and machine learning and whatnot, all the fancy things about AI. I've invested in him. So what he was drawing, if he was drawing, let's say 5 lakhs per annum Indian rupees, now I have to pay him at least 10 lakhs to retain him here. Right? It's 100% cost up. So if I'm in business to make profits, I'm not here for charity. So very clearly, Mr. Customer, who's going to bear this cost? We will not be able to use a magic wand and bring everything to you in a rapid fashion. We will definitely have to go through the motions to get your businesses through the AI engine. And for that, I need these people who have now become more costly because I've invested in them. So this part in the estimation doesn't figure out. As a matter of fact, there is no estimation standard for AI projects, right?
Right.
The only difference that I want to bring to our audience is in the typical SDLC, it was requirements, design, blah, 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 testing. But now you would have seen data came during testing. We had a database, we had a model, but there was no data in it. We went and put data after coding. Flip the whole thing around. Now you need data to start the process. Right? So our thinking has to be rewired, our designing has to be rewired, and it means there is a lot of learning that has to go into this process, and hence estimation is going to be different. right?
Absolutely.
So some of the costs that we are very clearly missing, infrastructure may still be okay because we have anyway from a 2010, 2014, $50 billion industry. Cloud services has become a 800 billion industry in 26, right? Look at the growth.
Hmm.
Now, with that kind of growth when it comes to infrastructure services, I think we can still manage that even without GPUs. I mean, if you've read some of these, even without GPUs, with just our laptops we can still do great things. So while infrastructure may still not be that kind of a shock for organizations taking up this journey, I think what really becomes a bigger cost is the engineers. Again we are talking people,
Hmm.
right? It is going to result in higher people costs. There are people who have used auto generation tools, AI tools for coding, but they are not able to do enterprise grade. And the
Hmm.
kind of debugging that they have to do and spend their midnight oils increased. So it's all becoming even more because right now it's still the formative years in enterprises. We should acknowledge that fact. AI is not a magic thing, like I said. So my
Absolutely.
view
Yeah.
when it comes to costs, training is going to be a huge cost, people is going to be a huge cost. Let's not take our eyes away from estimation from a data point of view is also going to be huge cost. You're going to pay for this data, right? These are things that don't get discussed at all, as I see in many forums.
Yeah, these are some of the elements which are invisible in most of the
Right. So,
POCs that they talk about.
Vishendra,
Yeah,
I would just like to add from an enterprise IT side, okay?
sure, sure, Praveen.
Because you talked about infrastructure cost surprises. So I'd share one experience. We used computer vision API to automatically tag images and
Hmm.
store them on cloud Azure. Okay, so we started with 5,000 images, and very quickly, uh, of course, there is this principle that the more images you feed, the more intelligent the machine learning becomes. So it gained the accuracy of 95, 96%, and then up to 97, 98 in second year, and 98.5 in third year. Okay, however, there was one surprise because you asked about the surprise. In infrastructure cost, there is one which is capex cost and another which is opex cost. So suddenly we realized in year three that our cost of Azure storage is going way beyond the budgets, and it just goes on increasing. And the issue was we were told by the business that everything they need on the hot storage. Okay, because there is a way, there are tools which can optimize Azure cost, cloud cost, etc. But then there is still that issue. So data opex cost is something where we actually couldn't estimate how much would it be. So then if at all we have to share the learning from that, then maybe even that could form part of the design principle where, okay, I'll grow my data with this way. I will do the housekeeping. I will also make sure that this is the hot storage, this is the cold storage, and so on and so forth. Because whether or not, more or less, everybody is actually using cloud now. So
Yeah.
that's just one experience I wanted to share.
Thank you, Praveen. In fact, you talked about this cloud and also data. In fact, I was also studying in one of the article. I think there's a study which has been shared by Deloitte, and they were also talking about these costs, balancing these costs, and there's some some numbers that have been worked out by some other individual, and they were saying the cloud cost is going to be much more as compared to the on-premise cost
Yeah,
for moving forward because the data consumption
Yes,
or the
it
token
is.
consumption is very
in
high
fact,
from cloud
Yeah,
perspective,
in fact,
and that has
in fact,
not
they
been
say,
actually
I
forecasted
yeah, yeah.
by the startups.
In fact, as a real practitioner, I have lost the count of number of times I have faced by finance committees to explain why this cost is going way over the budget. Okay.
Yeah.
And I would refrain from making very provocative comments here. But yes, that's the worry, and there is an interesting conversation happening on how to address that worry. We'll talk about it.
Thank you. Thanks, Praveen. GD, I'll come back to you again. You talked about Indian services companies, and these services companies. There are many in India. Not that many product companies, but we have more services company. And these services companies actually face a harder challenge than product companies because they can't just build one internal tool. They have to cater to hundreds of client contexts. So how does this services reality explore the cost and infrastructure forecast compared to a standard product company?
I think this is where what I said about the human intervention from a strategy and a leadership point of view plays a very big role. It is a very complex situation. So for my internal company needs, let's say I've gone with Copilot, but my customer wants a Grok, or my customer wants to be on Cloud or whatever else is available there, Gemini. So from a Gen AI point of view, where I'm going to be using some of these strong tools to kind of make the customer's organization AI enabled. Obviously, the customer bears the cost, right? There is no way that so for my company, for advice, for example, I'm going to standardize my infrastructure. I'm going to standardize what my mail server is going to be. So everything is standardized, like how my AI engine will also be standardized. I will not let my employees work on anything that they want. Obviously, I will apply the firewall. Now, many companies have already done this. Okay, they've standardized on some platform and they have asked their teams to use that, and in fact they've ring-fenced it very well. There are ways to do all of this. People may have read all this, so this is taken care. But when it comes to the real challenge, where your customers, training also is a challenge, and using your customers environment to so to that extent the team has to be able to advise them which is the right approach. One of my customers is using something else instead of a standard stuff. So I'm saying, why don't you go for an enterprise suite of products? So this is where people who are experienced, who've been in the business, who know which is easy on the purse of the customer. That has to be your thinking hat, right? You can't
Yeah.
just all the costs. You should be able to give them the right kind of advice to say what they should be doing to keep their costs also low. Whatever said and done, in the interim, the next 6 months, 1 year, 18 months, 2 years, the cost will skyrocket. Because on one end, you're trying AI, the other end, your people have to be there to balance the business. Maybe in
Exactly.
pockets, you can get some advantages, but it won't be a huge ROI or a huge saving. After 2 years, obviously things will be, but it is too far. And someone said AI is moving so fast, we can't even predict what will happen next month, right? And all the geopolitical issues adding on to that. So, safer to say that don't expect anything immediately as an ROI. From a services point of view, advise your customers to go easy and not be greedy for bottom lines right away. Everybody wants bottom lines, right? All shareholders want bottom lines. But with
Right.
AI, do it very measured, and services industry should start doing a little bit more investment on R&D, which I think is a suggestion.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good point. And R&D should be a continuous process, especially in the services companies.
Yeah.
Arun, with this scenario, if we look at build versus buy economics, and the data shows 2:1 success advantage for vendor partnership or internal builds, and build costs more while taking longer. So when does building actually make economic sense for an enterprise, and what scale or strategic advantage justifies paying more and waiting longer?
Okay. Good question, and a pertinent one for that matter. Uh, Build versus buy is rather a question that you should look at it what is available as commodity and what is needed for you as a strategic edge for you to progress your business or to take advantage. Okay. So most of the AI models that are available today are built for generic use, which means it is general intelligence. Now, do I want to replicate that entire thing again within my organization? I don't think so. I don't think we should ever spend that kind of time, effort, energy, money in doing that. So, whatever general intelligence is available, whatever the model, it could be, Copilot or Perplexity or Claude or whatever else you're using. Again, usage specific, which is best for your use. You use that for general intelligence, but you have your own specific knowledge base from your own data sets that you have. That is what you would use to build over and above this as a layer above this general intelligence to give you the right build. So, generally speaking, I would say use what is available. That is the fastest way of handling it. But as you grow your AI practice into the organization, start looking at your internal data, clean it up,
Mm.
okay? Because I know for a fact, and I know a lot of the audience who are in the services or within the organizations who are looking at this will know how greatly, how clean your data structure, data systems are. So once you have attained a decent cleanliness in your data systems, you build over it.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
that's where your strategic advantage is.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
it's a combined effort. It's a combination. You start with generic, so you get your general stuff done. You are using AI, you're not running away from it, and you're not
Mm.
waiting for yourself to build. But as
Mm.
you're using this, you build, you clean up your data, you bring your data sets up to speed. Again, if you look at, say, a hospital environment, they have some specific stuff. If you look at supply chain organizations, they have a very specific knowledge base that they would have within their organizations. Uh, Look at what Asian Paints has done with its data. It's maintained a
Mm.
clean data set. Now, if you put intelligence over it, it's doing magic. Okay.
Correct.
Similarly, so that's the understanding that I have, and I would say build what is necessary for you and for from your organization perspective. Use everything else.
Yeah, makes sense, Arun. And that's a core competitive mode. If you have that maturity in terms of your data and AI, then you can use as your core competitive mode, and you can amortize high fixed costs over large long-term usage.
Yeah. So
Um,
I just like to add just a single line for everyone to remember.
yeah,
Build only where you need to own decisions and accountability. Everywhere else, buy.
it makes sense. Let me also quickly pivot to from build versus buy to a giant versus focused approach that we should be having in terms of AI moving forward. And this is more like a this has been talked a lot within the Indian context. But is the real economics win for Indian enterprises in building small language models trained on specific domains like Indian agriculture, finance, law, health, rather than buying expensive generic LLM APIs? There's a question uh, to all panelists.
Sorry,
So
I'm not sure I followed the question. Can you repeat the question, please? I'm sorry, there's a
The-
break in your voice.
yeah. So the question is, if we talk about giant versus focused LLMs, is the real economic win for Indian enterprises is in building small language models trained on specific domains like Indian agriculture, finance, or law, rather than buying expensive generic LLM APIs?
so
Is
can
that
I start on the answer and then others can follow because it kind of falls into the line of what I was talking of.
sure?
Okay. So uh, there are specific areas that are pretty much unique to India. So if you look
Hmm.
at agriculture, the land, the soil patterns, the rain systems, the kind of crops that we have been traditionally growing, all of that is very unique. So building there, building data sets there, and building intelligence there makes a lot of sense. India has the largest railway network systems.
Hmm.
So when a supply chain industry, wants to build intelligence out of that network and the everything around that, it makes a lot of sense because that's unique to India.
Hmm.
From a regulatory law perspective, I think there is a uh, you could generally the laws of the land, majorly remain the same in terms of the context, but specifics are unique to each country and each district or whatever else. So again, a lot of the places where there is regulatory requirement, where it is unique to the local environment, I
Hmm.
think we should build, and that's where our unique advantage will be.
Thank you, Arun. Yeah, that has been actually recommended by various organizations as well, especially where should India focus on, and SLM is one of the area that they are kind of directing towards. Let me quickly move to segment two. We already crossed 60 minutes. And I would, if we have any questions, more questions coming from the audience, do share that with us quickly, so that we can quickly pick it up and take it forward from here. Uh, but I'll quickly go through the production deployment patterns, which is part of the breakthrough blueprint. And if you look at the proven deployment patterns that avoid pilot purgatory, which is incremental envelope, start with single workflow, expand with validation gates, shadow production, run AI parallel to existing systems, validate without disruption, and phased federation, prove in one department, then expand. So organizations that scale step by step tend to succeed, while big bang transformations usually fail. So Arun, from your perspective, if we look at these three deployment patterns that has been shared by industry research, which one would you recommend? Make sense for these POCs to kind of focus on.
Uh, so there are so the shadow method is the one that works best. Now there is a fallout to it in terms of how it is presented when we are talking to the CFOs and stuff like that. We'll come to that later. But for any enterprise rollouts that you would work on, okay, we do not look at a big bang rollout where one is shut down, the other is just switched on. It is a phased mechanism. The old systems are still running, the new systems are also running, and as and when the new systems are confirmed to be as good as it was in the new old systems, we slowly move people onto it. So the shadow network always works. It is always the smoothest. It is always the cleanest. And again, going back to the earlier question of the various gaps, so the learning gap is addressed, the trust gap is addressed, the process gap is addressed, and hence the finance gap is also addressed.
Correct. Yeah. And this,
Yeah,
framing shadow production can act as a temporary insurance that avoids
absolutely,
multi-million dollar failures and
absolutely.
reputational
So
risk.
absolutely.
Praveen, quickly, if you look at the foundation workflows and governance, and if we look at in the context of, say, evolving DPDP Act or other compliances, that has to be taken into accountability, which are actually not non-negotiable. So how do you balance the innovation need to break things with the regulatory need to be accountable for AI output?
Sure. In fact, and I would try and keep the answer crisp because I'm sensitive of the time. But
Yeah.
very, fundamentally, I will make 2, 3 points. Shwendra, let's first understand that part of the governance or controls are non-negotiable, like the DPDP Act. Okay, some of the GDPR related provisions. This is non-negotiable. I would not want to frame it as whether it is governance versus innovation. It has to be innovation with governance. Okay, and basically this particular aspect is very beautifully captured by a Gartner model. They call it AI sandwich. Okay, so what they recommend is you have the bottom layer, which is a very well defined clean data as well as controls by design. In the middle there is AI model, and on the top layer there is human in the loop. So while the innovation is happening in the middle layer, okay, AI is not running unchecked. Okay, it is basically enabled by the data and controls below, as well as the responsibility for outcome by the human at the top. So therefore the governance is not going to be any deterrent to innovation or progress or scaling, but only if it is retrospectively tried to fit in on a just for the sake of it, then it is going to be a challenge. Okay, so I would keep it at that, but we can of course continue a dialogue on comments and questions on the LinkedIn thread also.
Yeah, this governance and innovation is always two different side of the coins, and sometimes you need to map both the sides. So kind of
Yeah.
take it forward. There's a comment and a question which has come from Prashant. One of the question is, should AI be a top-down, like having AI strategy group that identifies projects and drives team to, or is it bottom-up where everyone gets trained and invite everyone to bring projects and build? Do some industries better for bottom-up and some for top-down? Gayatri, you would like to take a
Yeah, this is interesting. Um, so the leaders definitely have to understand why they're doing what they're doing, right? So it has to be both ways. That's the answer. Because people on the ground, so you take any industry, right? Pharmaceuticals, or you take drug discovery or agriculture. I think people on the ground who are really working, they understand their pain points very well. So when you give them a chance to say what could be probably passed on to AI, they will probably come up with brilliant suggestions, right? So they definitely need to be influencing the decisions. But how much will it take, how long will it take, what kind of impact on the organization and the society as a whole, the leader in the mix will have to decide that. So the response is, while reality comes from the bottom, practicality of making it happen should come from the top. That's my response, Vish.
thank you, GD.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I'll just add one sentence there.
yeah.
Okay, and I agree with that. It cannot be either bottoms up or top down. It should not be looked upon as a science project, some kind of an innovation R&D, or it should not be driven as a compliance exercise, but it should also factor the ground realities, experiences, and challenges. So it has to be combined. I would leave it at that.
Thank you. Thanks, Praveen. There's another question that has actually been shared on LinkedIn, and this question was from Dimitro um, Nasirov. Great insights. Thank you. How do you think organizations can effectively balance investing in AI infrastructure versus refining existing workflows? So, any
Right. So
response?
I will just
So,
quickly try and respond. Others can, sorry, and then you can add. I would say, and Arun, please feel free to add, that we talked about the gaps, etc., learning and workflow gap. So, in continuation for that, one suggestion is, refining workflow is basically if you're learning and identifying the gaps and making sure the process is right, and based on that you can scale the investments in infrastructure. That so it's more like a sequencing. That's one suggestion, but Arun, feel free to add your point of view.
boss, you just voiced what I wanted to say, that
So,
there is, you only sequence it. There is no other way out. Your workflow come first. You improve your workflow. You clean out your workflow as much as possible, and AI then works magic on it. Okay, and when you do that, your infrastructure processes will follow. So you have to look at it that way only. There is no other way out, at least as far as I see it.
Thank you. Thank you, Arun. So, all right, let me wrap this up now as we already exceeded our time. But, there are four things that you should certainly take note of. And of course, in this conversation, you might have taken your notes, but the recording will be available and you can watch this recording at your convenience. So the four things are: one is business problem first, not technology first; two, scale in steps, not big bang shadow production; three, build governance and from day one, not as a checkbox after; four, measure relentlessly, even though if you have not defined ROI, it could be a return on intelligence, but move from fun to do projects to purpose driven outcomes. There's the playbook, and the 5% I believe follows it, and the 95% don't. But yeah, let's before I wrap up, before I conclude further, uh, I'll also talk about the next problem, which is you finally get AI to work, you scale it, now you need to sell it, and suddenly everything breaks. When you look at AI, it's everywhere, but distribution strategy is not. Demos create friction, pilots challenged by ROI, trials have no commitments, channels misalign from sales-led motions to partnership, so whatnot. But what actually works for enterprise AI may not work for the traditional, may have not been working for traditional um, uh, solutions. So we are doing a session on Feb 19th around this conversation, wherein we will be talking about broken distribution and enterprise AI from demo to channels. We'll be having some CEOs will be joining in, and we have Dean Noli who will be joining from US. But thank you to Gayatri, Praveen, and Arun for sharing your experience and expertise in this session. This session has been recorded and is on LinkedIn Live, as I shared earlier. And if you have any further questions, do reach out to us. All of us are active on LinkedIn, and that's the easy way to connect with us. And if you want to share this video with your teams, your executives, your peers who couldn't make it live, feel free to share it. It's this session is being recorded and it's been there also on the YouTube channel. But for now, thank you for being
Thank you
here.
so much for the opportunity. This is
Thank you.
mind-boggling.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Vish, and the
Thank
team
you,
for
Vishwendra.
organizing this, and happy
Thank you.
to be part of it. Thank you.